Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Can you smell it? It is the thick, warm scent of palm oil blending with the smell of wet, red earth just after a tropical downpour. Listen closely. What you hear is not the honking of cars or the noise of the modern world. It is the rhythmic tapping of hundreds of craftsmen carving ivory, the ringing of metal against metal from the smithies, and in the distance, the deep, resonant thrum of drums echoing from the Oba's palace. You are standing in the middle of a vast, straight avenue, so wide it rivals, perhaps even surpasses, the streets of Amsterdam or Paris of the same era. Beneath your feet is not mud, but clay packed so tight and polished so smooth it gleams like marble. As night falls, you are not plunged into darkness. Along these roads, thousands of palm oil street lamps are burning, illuminating the massive walls that embrace the city. Welcome to Benin City in early 1897. This is not a village. It is not a primitive tribe, as Western history books of the 19th century often claimed. This is the London of Africa. A complex, sophisticated, and radiant metropolis hidden deep within the rainforest, where mathematics was applied to architecture and art reached the pinnacle of human achievement. Today, you won't just hear about the past, you will see it. Through the power of image reconstruction and artificial intelligence, we are going to do the impossible. We will resurrect every brick, every wall, and every glimmer of a civilization that was wiped off the map in just a few bloody days. You, yes, you, will be a living witness walking through the corridors of the royal palace before the fires of the British Army consume it all. But why return here? Why does the story of Benin matter so much? Because the fall of Benin was not just the end of a city. It was an event that permanently changed how the world views Africa and the very definition of civilization. What happened in February 1897 is a deep scar in human history, where greed was camouflaged as justice, and the soul of a people was stolen to be displayed in museums thousands of miles away. This story isn't just about stolen bronze statues. It is about a perfectly functioning social system that was shattered. It is about pride, tragedy, and a truth buried under ash for over a century. Before we see the fire, before we hear the Maxim guns tearing through the silence, we must understand what was lost. To feel the pain of destruction, you must first be overwhelmed by the beauty of existence. Let's walk through these great gates together, and witness the height of glory before the abyss swallows it all. Now, let your eyes adjust to the brilliant light reflecting off the ceiling panels. You are standing in the courtyard of the royal palace. Look around. What you see are not simple thatched huts. Before you lies a colossal architectural labyrinth with wooden pillars wrapped entirely in brass, engraved with images of warriors and pythons. When the sunlight pierces through the canopy, the entire palace seems to burn with a golden, powerful glow. Dutch explorers in the 17th century wrote that this palace was as large as their entire city of Haarlem. The floors and clay walls were polished so meticulously that it was said you could see your reflection in them. The drainage system here, underground channels guiding rainwater out of the city, worked so efficiently that even after the fiercest tropical storms, the streets remained dry and clean. It was a marvel of urban planning that many European cities of the time could only dream of. But, behind this splendor lay a stark and harsh reality. This society was not a paradise of freedom. It was a machine fueled by fear and absolute obedience. The wealth you see was built on a suffocating social hierarchy. If you look closely into the alcoves, you might see altars stained with dry blood. For the people of Benin, prosperity did not come from luck, but from maintaining balance with the spiritual world, and that balance sometimes demanded a steep price in human life. Superstition was not ignorance, it was the law, the constitution of this empire. A society glittering on the outside, but incredibly tense and fragile on the inside. To truly understand why the fall of Benin was such a tragedy, we cannot just glance at it. We must dissect the body of this empire. Imagine Benin society resting on 5 colossal pillars. 5 elements that turned this place into a regional superpower. The first pillar, the mathematics of earth and fractal architecture. Look at the city map from above. You will notice something strange. The houses and streets are not arranged in a grid like New York, but in a fractal structure, meaning small shapes repeat the exact pattern of larger shapes. A commoner's house is a miniature model of the palace, and the palace is a miniature model of the universe. Surrounding it all is a massive system of walls and moats. Archaeologists estimate that if you connected all the earthen walls surrounding Benin's satellite cities, they would be 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China. This was the largest earthwork construction on the planet made by human hands, costing hundreds of millions of hours of manual labor. The second pillar, the divine guilds. Do you hear the chiseling? That is the quarter of Eigen Iranwan, the Royal Brass Casters Guild. In Benin, art was not for decoration, it was historical documentation. These craftsmen held the secrets of lost wax casting technology with a precision that European engineers of the time could not believe Africans were capable of. They were not just artists, they were the royal printers, recording history, wars, and rituals onto brass plaques. If you controlled the brass guild, you controlled history. The third pillar, economic monopoly. Let's walk to the river port. Benin sat in a strategic position, controlling the gateway between the jungle and the coast. They held a monopoly on the world's most luxurious goods of the time, ivory, pepper, and palm oil, the liquid gold that was lubricating the industrial machines in Britain. The Oba, the king of Benin, controlled every transaction. No one traded without his permission. Wealth flowed into the palace like the Niger River, creating a vast treasury that any superpower would envy. The fourth pillar, the spiritual power of the Oba. At the center of everything was Oba Ovenramwan. He was not just a king, he was a living god. The people believed the Oba never ate, never slept, and never died. The stability of the kingdom depended entirely on his health and spiritual power. This belief was a double-edged sword. It created absolute unity, but it also meant that if the Oba fell, the people's entire worldview would collapse with him. And finally, the fifth pillar, the forest shield. For centuries, the dense rainforests surrounding Benin acted as a natural fortress. It stopped the cavalry of the Islamic empires to the north and discouraged European expeditions with deadly malaria. The Benin people believed this forest was impenetrable. They believed that God of Water would protect them from invaders from the sea. But they were wrong. All 5 pillars, the Great Walls, the brass technology, the economic monopoly, the divine power, and the forest shield, were about to face a force they had never imagined. A force coming not from gods, but from science and the cold greed of the industrial age. While the Benin people were reinforcing their clay walls, on the other side of the ocean, ironclad ships powered by steam were already leaving the docks. While Oba Ovenramwan was performing sacrificial rituals to beg for ancestral protection, a storm was forming on the horizon, a storm created not by magic, but by geology and chemistry. Let's cast our gaze away from Africa, to the cold laboratories of Europe. Here, the true enemy of Benin was revealed, but it was invisible. It was the malaria parasite and the hydrocarbon molecule. For thousands of years, the Anopheles mosquito and malaria were Benin's most loyal gatekeepers, killing any white man who dared to venture deep into the dark continent. But now, science had found quinine, a bitter medicine extracted from cinchona bark. The biological shield protecting Benin had been pierced. The British could now walk through the jungle without dying. Furthermore, the Industrial Revolution in Britain was hungry. The giant steam engines in Manchester and Liverpool needed lubrication, and the best oil for that was palm oil, the very thing Benin held in a chokehold. To the British Empire, Benin was no longer a mysterious kingdom to be respected, it was a bottleneck on a balance sheet that needed to be removed. The Oba did not know that the fate of his kingdom was not being decided on the battlefield, but by stock prices and raw material demand at the London Stock Exchange. This lack of understanding of global geopolitics was a fatal flaw. And then, the fuse was lit. Rewind to January 4, 1897. Acting Consul General James Phillips, a man carrying the typical arrogance of the Victorian era, decided to make a fateful journey. He wanted to meet the Oba to negotiate the lifting of the trade embargo. But the timing was terrible. Benin was in the holy month of Agu, the most sacred time of the year when the Oba was forbidden from seeing strangers. The Oba's messengers warned Phillips, "Do not come. The king cannot see you. If you come, the consequences will be dire." But Phillips, with blind faith in the power of the British flag, ignored them. He believed no tribal chief would dare touch a representative of the Queen. He was mistaken. On a sweltering afternoon in the dense forest near the village of Guado, Philip's entourage, unarmed to show goodwill but full of imposition, walked into an ambush. The Benin generals, fearing this was a disguised invasion, struck first. Screams, the sound of spears cutting the air, and chaos ensued. Almost the entire expedition was wiped out. Phillips was killed. Only 2 survivors managed to escape to the coast to break the news. The news hit London like an electric shock. Massacre. The British press screamed. But they didn't call it a war, they called it a punitive expedition. A fleet was immediately assembled under the command of Admiral Harry Rawson. 1,200 soldiers, including Marines and Coast Guards, armed to the teeth. Look at the tactical map now. February 9, 1897. The invasion begins. Unlike classic hand-to-hand battles, this was a confrontation between 2 eras. On one side were the brave Benin warriors, wielding swords and spears. Wearing tunics covered in amulets they believed could deflect bullets. On the other side was the Maxim gun, humanity's first weapon of mass destruction, capable of firing 600 rounds per minute. As the British advanced, the jungle shook. They used rockets, creating a terrifying screeching sound the Benin people called the thunder of the devil. Benin warriors surged forward like waves, trusting in divine protection, but they fell like grass cut by a scythe before the Maxim guns. No magic could stop physics. No amulet could resist a 0.45-inch bullet. One by one, the satellite villages fell. The great walls that were once a source of pride became death traps. The British troops marched steadily toward the city center with a cold order: destroy everything. On February 18, the gunfire reached the city gates. The smell of gunpowder now overpowered the scent of incense. The glorious height we admired earlier was now only hours away from the abyss. The gates were breached, and the invisible enemy now stood tall right in front of the Oba, holding a torch. By noon on February 18, 1897, the sun over Benin City disappeared. It was completely obscured by thick columns of black smoke rising from the thatched roofs. The city, once likened to the London of Africa, where palm oil lamps once illuminated magnificent streets, was now burning in a real fire, the fire of destruction. Imagine standing in the middle of that chaos. There is no order, no class. As the Maxim gun bullets tore through the clay walls, the psychological structure of the entire society collapsed. The people of Benin were not just facing an enemy of flesh and blood, they were facing the collapse of their cosmology. In utter panic, seeing that the British weapons were unstoppable, the priests and officials fell into a desperate fanaticism. They believed the gods were angry. In the final hours, the most desperate attempts to save the city turned into a nightmare. Altars were flooded with the blood of sacrificial victims, animals, and tragically, humans, in the fragile hope that this offering would halt the enemy's advance. But the gods were silent. The steam engines and cold guns marched on. To the British soldiers entering the city, the scene looked like hell on earth, but they did not understand that this was the final scream of a culture dying in fear. But the real tragedy is not in the statistics, it is in the specific human cost. Look at Oba Ovenramwan. Just days ago, he was a living god whose feet were never allowed to touch the bare ground. Now, he is on the run. Picture that king, shedding his heavy coral robes, the symbol of eternal power, to don coarse cloth, hiding deep in the forests he once ruled. He sits in a makeshift hut, listening to the city of his ancestors popping and crackling in the red fire. His fall is not just the loss of a throne, but the collapse of the belief that he was the center of the universe. A deposed god, trembling and alone. And what of the craftsmen in the brass guild? Those talented hands that once created masterpieces are now bound. They watch strangers storm into the palace, but these invaders are not admiring the art. They are looting. This is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in global art history. Over 2,500 to 4,000 royal treasures, plaques retelling centuries of history, brass oba heads, exquisitely carved ivory, are ripped from the walls, thrown onto the ground like scrap metal. You can picture the British soldiers sitting casually on piles of precious brass statues, smoking and laughing. To them, this is not cultural heritage, this is spoils of war, to pay for the cost of the expedition. They call it barbaric art, yet carefully pack every single piece to be auctioned in London. Benin's history, the memory of an entire people, is dismantled, crated, and taken away forever. On Sunday, February 21st, a fire broke out. Some say an accident, others say intentional, and that fire finished the job. It completely consumed the royal palace and most of the city. What the bullets hadn't destroyed, the flames devoured. The magnificent Benin City, with its great walls and planned streetlights, was officially wiped off the face of the earth. All that remained was ash and an eerie silence. The people scattered, the king exiled, and the brass guardian gods were now floating across the ocean, beginning a journey of exile with no return date. A brilliant civilization was extinguished, leaving a deep scar not just on the African soil, but on the conscience of humanity. When Admiral Rawson's ships docked in England, carrying thousands of wooden crates filled with brass and ivory loot, They thought they were just bringing back gold to sell for cash. But they didn't know they were bringing back a ticking time bomb that would shatter the philosophical foundations of Western art. Imagine the scene at the British Museum in late 1897. The experts, the art historians, white men with groomed mustaches and monocles, men who believed Africa was a dark continent with no history, no civilization, stood frozen. Before them were brass heads with perfect anatomical proportions. Relief plaques with a technical complexity that even the best foundries in London at the time would struggle to replicate. They tapped the metal, they examined the engravings with magnifying glasses. Silence filled the room. How could people they called savages, people whose city they had just burned to civilize, create such exquisite masterpieces? The existence of Benin art was a direct slap in the face to the theory of white supremacy. To protect their ego, Western scholars initially invented ridiculous theories. They said these statues must have been made by ancient Greeks who got lost, or by the Portuguese teaching the locals. They could not accept the truth. An independent African civilization had reached this artistic peak centuries ago. But beauty has its own language, and that language does not lie. From the ashes of Benin City, a new aesthetic order was reborn right in the heart of Europe. Moving into the early 20th century, these statues began leaking into antique shops in Paris and Berlin. And who was walking there? Pablo Picasso, Henri Matisse. Picture Picasso, the young painter stuck in a rut, searching for a new visual language, standing stunned before an African mask. He saw abstraction, power, and the stylization of form that Western academic art had forgotten. It was the venom of this stolen heritage that injected itself into the bloodstream of Western art, helping to birth Cubism and modernism. You could say the face of 20th century art carries a strand of DNA from the nameless Benin craftsmen who died under the Maxim guns. It is a sweet and bitter revenge of beauty. Their city was burned, but their artistic soul conquered the minds of the very people who conquered them. Meanwhile, back in Nigeria, the physical Benin City was dead, but it did not vanish. Under British rule, a new order was established. The city was replanned. The fractal mud houses were replaced by colonial brick blocks. Oba Ovenramwen lived his final days in exile in Calabar, looking back at his homeland through dreams. He died in 1914, the same year World War I broke out, marking the end of an era. But the royal bloodline did not break. The Oba's son returned, rebuilt the palace, though more modest than before, and kept the flame of tradition alive. The brass casters, though stripped of their ancestors' best works, fired up their furnaces again. They began casting what was lost, not for worship as before, but to remind the world that they were still there. The event of 1897 didn't kill Benin. It unintentionally scattered the seeds of Benin culture across the globe. Today, when you walk into the British Museum, the Quai Branly in Paris, or the Ethnological Museum in Berlin, those Benin bronzes still stand there, silent and majestic. They are no longer inanimate objects. They are reluctant ambassadors, survivors of a disaster, telling millions of visitors every year about a brilliant civilization that once existed in the rainforest. The rebirth did not happen in the walls, but in human consciousness. Benin forced the world to rewrite history books. And that is the stepping stone to the biggest debate of the 21st century. Today, more than 120 years after the fire went out on the roofs of Benin City, we are living in the aftershocks of that event, whether you realize it or not. Look at the world around you. The hottest debate in the cultural world today is not about a new painting, but about the concept of repatriation. The term, Benin Bronzes, has become a global symbol for a movement of historical justice. When you stand before the bulletproof glass at the British Museum in London or the Met in New York, you are not just looking at art. You are looking at a crime scene. You are looking at bronze, prisoners of war, held captive thousands of miles from home. Their presence in the West is proof of African genius, but also undeniable proof of colonial brutality. But history is shifting. The resurrection arc we spoke of at the beginning is only truly starting now. In recent years, we have seen the unimaginable. Germany, France, and universities in the UK have begun signing agreements to return these artifacts to Nigeria. For the first time in over a century, the exiled gods are packing their bags to go home. A new museum, the Edo Museum of West African Art, is being built right on the grounds of the old Benin City. Designed by the renowned architect David Adjaye, ready to welcome the lost children back. The story of Benin teaches us a profound lesson: you can burn a city, you can destroy walls, but you cannot incinerate the memory of a people. The physical Benin City of 1897 is gone, but its spirit, its fractal beauty, and its dignity survived the fire, the looting, and the oblivion of time to rise stronger than ever in the 21st century. We, watching this video, are witnesses to the next chapter. We are not just learning history, we are shaping how we treat it. Thank you for traveling back in time with me, through the glory and tragedy of the London of Africa. I hope that the next time you see a Benin bronze statue, you won't just see cold metal. You will see the glow of palm oil lamps, see the bustle of the craft guilds, and hear the echo of an immortal civilization. I'm Tim, and our mission is, keeping history reborn. The world is vast. And there are countless sleeping civilizations waiting for us to wake them up. So, where should our time machine go next? Do you want to travel east to witness the pride and fall of the samurai during the Meiji Restoration? Or travel west to stand amidst the great chaos of the fall of Rome? Leave your choice, Japan or Rome, in the comments below. The decision is yours. For now, goodbye, and see you in the next resurrection.